Welcome to Check In with Jason Lauritsen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Each week, I invite someone who is leading the way in this work to join me for a conversation to help educate and inspire us. Now, my guest today is Steph Ryter. Steph is the creative culture leader at Arity, a mobility data and analytics company founded by the Allstate Corporation in 2016. In her role as creative culture leader, Steph focuses on creating an environment where employees feel valued, supported, and inspired. Now, I first met Steph through the Employee Engagement Awards a number of years ago, where I learned about the incredible work that she and the Arity team are doing around engagement and culture and so much more. It truly is inspiring. And that's why I invited her here today to chat with me about some of that great work and what we can learn from it. So, Steph, I'm so grateful you're here. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. And I just appreciate, we met so many years ago and have connected. It's really cool to be able to do something like this, just to talk about something we're both passionate about, is like our people.
Absolutely. So let's build some foundation. So let's start by learning a little bit more about your role and the work you do at Arity, and maybe start with a little bit more about what Arity does and who Arity is as a company.
Yeah. So I am the creative culture leader, as you mentioned, and my job is to make this the best place to work. And Arity collects and analyzes trillions of miles of driving data to create a better understanding of how people move. So we're like a mobility and analytics, mobility data and analytics company, and we're really focused on creating better experience for drivers, communities, and businesses on and off the road. And it's interesting. I want to make sure that, I share this, that, Arity has the world's largest driving data set that's tied to insurance claims corrected through mobile devices or in-car devices, even vehicles themselves. And Arity derives insights from those unique devices that helps us understand and predict driving behavior at scale. And an interesting stat is the U.S. fatalities declined for the second year in a row in 2023, but yet there's more than 44,000 lives that are lost on our nation's roadways. So there's definitely that critical need for a deeper and more meaningful understanding of the data. And Arity does believe that driving behavior data can be used to create a transportation ecosystem that really works better for everyone. And that's such a good mission that not only I could stand behind, but that's like why people want to work here, is that they truly believe in what we're doing.
Cool. So tell me a little bit more about your role in making sure that those employees are locked in and inspired and motivated. I know you do a whole bunch of stuff, but tell us a little bit more about your role in your work.
Yeah, I been in this role for almost 8 years. And it's hard to believe that the time has gone by. And even prior to this, I worked in television news. I worked, my first job in Allstate was wholesaling annuities and life insurance. And I got into a rotational program and was learning about organizational effectiveness and marketing and learning and development, and ended up on the innovation team. So figuring out how do I reinvent myself multiple times. And then this job came, it was part of Connected Car when, we spun out of Allstate. And they, the president at the time said, I need someone to make this the coolest place to work. We're going to move from a suburban location to the Chicago office. And I'm afraid we're going to lose all of our tech talent. And I said, that's not even a job description. Make it a cool place. What are you talking about? And he said, well, why don't you write the job description? So I did. And I think about all those experiences that I've had in other roles. It really led me to think about the number one important thing is the community, the people. And so that is kind of how I fostered everything that I think about for our organization. And, back then it was me, one man band, and first day in the job, and you have to figure it all out. but you also have to plan strategically, like, well, this is not sustainable. Like, how do we create opportunities for people to connect? We fast forward to where we are now. We have something called like the Arity way, which helps us understand like our culture is like that overarching piece, our values, like that, we're better together as a team, like we're stronger, we want to innovate, we want to collaborate, we want to connect. And at the end of the day, but it's more than just that. We also have to make sure like we have balance. Work, like, is your well-being taken care of, which we know a lot, people talk a lot more past the pandemic of that, but we were thinking about that way back then when we were in person in an office, like all those pieces. Are you recognized for who you are as a person, or even the work you do? That's always been like a cornerstone of who we've been, which I think is cool. And now 8 years later, just the evolution is even more refined, probably more structured, because I've got a team that helps, and even our people team, is a good partner, and their job is to attract, develop, retain talent, and our job is once you get here, how do we like make sure that you feel like you belong here? So it's a good role to be in.
Well, and I think one of the things that jumps out at me as you tell your story, I don't think I've ever heard you describe kind of the origin story of Steph in this role, but what a different way that, if you think about whatever you want to call it, people work internally, right? If you think about traditional HR, I think, the purpose of traditional HR is like, well, make sure people get paid and keep us out of trouble. And, it's like what happens when you give a very different kind of directive to your people. Like, create a cool place to work is an entirely different aspiration, or an entirely different call to the people team, or the folks that are shaping culture. I love that. And you obviously have succeeded at that. And I'm curious what part, when you think just broadly about the work you get to do, what part of your job do you love the most, gets you most excited? What are the things that light you up the most?
I think, when we were in person, it was always like the people, connecting, talking to people. I'm a big extrovert. I get energy from being around others. And then now we're 100% remote. We used to be in person. And now it's like, how do I find those avenues for connection? And it's really about being intentional about talking to people, not just about like the work and being so transactional, like, what do you need from me today? And like, not even the basics of, hello, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? Or when the meeting ends and it's like, okay, we still have time. Let's not hang up. Let's catch up. Those are intentional things. And, I took this from our sales ideas. In sales, we used to call people in my sales rep is, your customers, to check in with them. And I thought, how could we do that same thing with our employees? And so now we call every single employee, me and my teammate. And, the list is long. We have a lot of people from all over the U.S. and even Northern Ireland and India. And we spend 25 minutes just connecting. It's called culture connection. And that's probably my favorite thing that I get to do. And it's just a 25-minute meeting. We set it up. You do not have to prepare. And it's just to talk and to get to know each other. And when it's somebody they know really well, and it's all random, I'm like, oh, how are you doing, Jason? I haven't talked to you in forever. Or if it's someone I don't, wow, you've never shared your camera before. This is great. We're getting a chance to meet you. So it could be in different places depending on, relationships. But then, what I noticed is then someone pings me later, like, hey, I remember talking to you and I've built a connection. And then they started asking me questions, right? There used to be a line next to my desk before in person of people like, Steph will know. The culture team will know. Let's just line up by them. And now the line is Teams or other ways to communicate is they can ask, whatever question to help them. And I think if you don't create those opportunities to build relationships, you don't get that like other people then connecting back to me.
Well, I know we had talked a little bit about this in the past, that you do this. And I just want to sort of pull that apart, what you just said, because you kind of glazed over this a little bit. So you have an intentional practice. What you just described, these culture connections, is an intentional practice where you or someone in your team is reaching out and scheduling this 25-minute conversation with a one-on-one with every single employee at least once a year, every year.
Correct.
what you just
Yeah.
described, correct?
Yeah.
Which is something I would bet very few HR/culture teams undertake. And you described that it certainly breaks down the barrier, I guess, probably, because they're now connected to you as a human being. They know you, you know them, so they feel more comfortable coming to you. What else have you found as benefits of doing that? Because that's a lot of investment of time to do that. What makes it worthwhile beyond just the comfort that you create for them in reaching out?
I think there's a couple things I could say about that. One is when I connected with somebody later on, there was like the hurricane in Asheville, right? And it kind of went up, and you would never expect it to end up there when you would think hurricanes, in that area. And one of the employees that I had called before, we just connected, happened to live there. Just sent him a note, hey, let me know if you need anything, if you're okay. And they had said, wow, I'm so grateful that you reached out because I'm not okay. There are things going, like we don't have power. We don't have like the basic necessities. And we just kept connecting. And now it was something that I think he said that he really felt like the company cared about who he was because, we were reaching out. And it really started with a call of our people call and then our connection call. And now we met yesterday, just coincidence, that we have a reoccurring meeting, and it was just to connect. How are you doing? What's going on with the community? Oh, you have water now. Oh, you have to boil it, but that's okay, right? Like just the progress. And he enjoys it. I enjoy it. So we're just like, let's do it again into 2025. And those are things that you don't expect because I actually care about you and the fact that he knows this. And this is virtual. That really touches me, that it meant so much to him. So it's an example. Like
I suspect
you don't understand that what impact you could make when you reach out with someone. And I have heard that from others, and it was just coincidence, right? And I think sometimes I believe things happen for a reason, and for whatever reason, you were on my list to call today, and it meant something to you, and you got a chance to tell me, which I always call like the lollipop moment. There's a good TED Talk about that. Like you tell someone when you made an impact, for them, so then they know. I love hearing those, thank you for reaching out. It's such even just the small teams chat.
Well, and I suspect that there's probably all kinds of reverberations that happen. And I think one of the things I think probably part of the reason your work resonates so well is that you and by extension others within the organization are like you're doing the work. I think so often we talk about checking in on employees, we talk about caring for employees, we talk about a lot of things, but we're not doing the real work to really connect, right? Unless it's, you happen to reach out with some kind of problem and then we're going to have a conversation, but it's really, you need something from me, so we're going to problem solve and we have a conversation. But that's different than, hey, I just want to check in with you to see how you are and learn a little bit more about you and learn about your experience and introduce myself. That's a very different thing. And so I commend you. I think that is a really powerful and underappreciated approach to this work, right? The one-to-one. And certainly if you're in an organization with tens of thousands of employees, that gets a lot more complicated. But it's the intention and the execution of that. I think there's different ways to do it, but that's really awesome. So I just will say, just the story is impacting. So that's my lollipop moment for you is I love hearing about this because it reminds me of the power of that one-to-one time that we invest in people.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is when I get to learn about people's hobbies, what they're interested in, what other skills you have. One of I call it a culture product, like I have a product mindset for the things that we build on our team. It's called Learn Day. And Learn Day is the first Friday of every month, which is going to be tomorrow here. And people could present about different topics, either about our business. They could present about how do we work better together. Maybe they have skills that they could teach others, skill development. And then I have one called Water Cooler, which is whatever you'll want to talk about, like you can talk about. And I learned different things about folks through those calls. And I said, that's interesting. Maybe you should do a Learn Day. And it's really cool because other people say the same thing. Like Learn Day is the first culture product that we've ever built. And it used to be virtual. Now it's in person. I think it's even better in person because it makes it, virtual, it makes it a little bit easier to record. And, people are like, where's the presentation? I missed it. And I'm like, oh, you care that you want to rewatch this or watch it at all? I mean, that's kind of fun to me. But we had somebody who, we had a big deal sale, and then they talked about what it took to get that sale from a business perspective. So it connects our employees to the work we're trying to do. We had someone say, from the engineering team, they have something called flash demos, and they just show up, anybody who wants to volunteer in engineering, and then they demo new technologies or things they're working on to teach others. And our analytics team, they always go to conferences and they learn so much that they also, the best way to learn, I always say, is to teach. That is the part of Learn Day. So then they teach it back. What did I learn at this conference? Because you can't send everybody, but I can teach you what I learned. And then Water Cooler is kind of my favorite. It could be the catch-all. Somebody was also a pilot and decided to do a Learn Day on their plane, not taking off, but showing us what they do. Here's my cockpit. Here's, if I have to fly, here's what the radar looks like, just something they're passionate about. And you did that at work. And so that you never know what all those different things connect other people to that employee just because they're sharing something that they are passionate about. And I think, my television background, to me, I look at it as I give you this platform for you to then create what you want to create, like the production, we're the producers, right? So I have that TV mind, even have a TV rundown for big all company meetings because I care about making sure that it's a good, let's call it a show, so that you could focus on the content, right? That you are engaged. It's not just a meeting. Oh, we have to go to this meeting and it's so boring. No, we want it to be exciting. We want it to feel meaningful and it's not so, I don't know, stuffy, I guess. I think our meetings are more casual. And then I think that's kind of Arity. We are more casual. So then when you're more casual in that way, I think people are more prone to open up and be a little bit more of who they are at home in their office, which is their home. So, if you already feel at home being here, we want you to feel at home, to be your true self. And we create opportunities for that to happen.
So let's talk a little bit more about let's just back up a little bit, I guess, in terms of if I'm listening, as if I'm listening to this and I haven't heard about this concept. So Learn Day, if we step back, talk to me about sort of what Learn Day is just broadly. So it's happening once a month, you said.
Yeah.
It sounds like, and it is just describe what it is, I guess, and then that'll help, I think, connect what you just described about how employees are participating.
Sure. And, it started back in the day when we were back in my learning and development days. We had an engineer, and I remember working on a quarterly learning on-site. So every quarter, then the engineers would come and we would create opportunities for them to develop themselves. That's my L&D background. And this engineer happened to come over into a connected car, when we were down in the Mart. And he said, Steph, this is so dumb. Why do we only focus on learning once a quarter? And I said, well, we don't have to. Maybe we could do once a month. And it was really the ideas of our employees. So a lot of the things we create are based on our employees' ideas. And I said, well, do we have a purpose and an outcome? Those are my criteria. And if you want to have a stake in the game, help me build this. And so we said, well, let's do the first Friday of every month just to make it easy. So everyone would kind of know when it is and what's the criteria. And at the beginning, it was you could talk about whatever you want. We don't care. And it's all day, and you would have the criteria is you need to participate in at least 1 hour of your learning. You can either go to a presentation, you could teach, as I mentioned, teaching is the best way to show your learning and teach others, or you could read a book, watch a TED Talk, do a course online, whatever it is, but just take an hour. and we block everyone's calendar. It is a dedicated time. And so, you can choose to do it if you want. If you don't, you don't. If you do, it is there for you. And everybody knows about it. Fast forward now 8 years later, we've put a little bit more structure, with our 4 themes. And those themes were always there, but they were underlying, like, oh yeah, I guess these presentations are about the business. But I think it helps people see that, like, in the evolution, oh, I know why I need to be here. Like, here's what I'm going to get out of this, right? Just those little tweaks. Like, I think of our culture product as like an app. And as we get user feedback, we iterate and we make it better. So there was always like a software update. And so now here, almost 8 years later, like, we have a really well worked, like, from a logistical perspective, like, it works like a machine. And I don't really even have to ask people to present. Like, people are like, where's the sign up link? I want to present in January. Like, I already have, like, it's already almost full and we're still in December and I still have tomorrow to deliver. Like, it's impressive.
So let me break that down a little bit then. Just, I'm curious. So tomorrow. So what does tomorrow look like if I'm an employee at Arity? Is there just an hour of stuff that I can go to? Is it a whole day of things? Am I still what is that? What is my opportunity as an employee tomorrow on Learning Day?
So tomorrow we have a bunch of 30-minute presentations. We'll call it 25 presentation because we'd like to give you the 5-minute break between the next. And you can pick which ones you want to go to. So it's just a bunch of calendar holds. But usually I will send out a slate 2 weeks before that said, here's the presentation. And then here's the calendar hold. So just accept them if you want to go, decline them if you don't. No big deal. And then people just show up and they just go from like meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. We collect data and user feedback after every session. So usually it's like a 5-star rating and like an open box, like, tell us what you think. How do we make this better? So we get feedback and we look at all that data and participation data to see like who's coming and is what we're doing working. So it's not like we're just putting things up there and not asking for feedback. It is a well-oiled machine and we make changes as necessary if we find, something's not working. And then, we send out the recordings at the end of the session. And then next week, like I mentioned, then I do the call out. All right, we're ready for next month Learn Day. And sometimes I don't need presentations because people are already wanting to sign up. And that I'll say like, hey, I'm good for January. I need like February and beyond. And people are like, oh, let me sign up in March because I know I want to do something in March. And it's really cool that I don't really have to ask for someone to present because it's a staple within our culture that we've always been a learning community. And so, if maybe you don't want to do something today, maybe in the future you'll think down the line, like sometimes in those people connection calls, I was like, do you ever consider doing that as a Learn Day? Like, I've thought about it. Maybe it's that little push to like, why don't you let's see what happens. Like, I'm here to help you, right? We'll handle all the logistics. All you got to do is show the screen and talk about it. Right. And so how do we make it easy? So again, we do the production and you just do your thing.
Out of curiosity, because I'm thinking if someone was going to try it. So I'm guessing the instinct for most organizations or most people stepping into this is that you'd have to really, the instinct would be like, okay, this has to be business related or business, but it sounds to me like you have a little broader lens on this than that. And so what is the criteria for if I want to sign up for a Learn Day, how do I know if what I want to offer is something that is appropriate for a Learn Day presentation?
Yes. So we'll put in the 4 criteria. Is it about the business? And then we'll give a little blurb what the business is. Is it about how you have some skills that you want to teach others? Is it about how we work? Maybe we need to work better together. I've found ways for us to better connect. And then the water cooler is kind of the catch-all. At the end of the day, when I look at the submissions, they all meet the criteria. It's very rare that I would get something. I was like, I'm not really sure what you're trying to do here. And if I do get that, then I kind of follow up and ask and clarify what, their point is. But for the most part, I think because people know that there's this platform for them, even if maybe they don't go or they don't participate, people love the fact that we have Learn Day. They talk about it. They talk about it externally. They talk about it to their family. It's impressive because we take the time to do it.
Sure. Just for a sense of scale, Steph, I should have asked this probably up front. How many employees does Arity have? Just so people can have a sense of what who you're supporting.
Sure. We have just about under 400 or so. We're mostly in the U.S. across, and then a team in Northern Ireland and in India, in Bangalore.
And you're remote first now, so so this probably does work it also is a really great opportunity to not only learn, but build a sense of community or connectedness because of people coming together around this. In the presentations that you're doing, when you have these 30 minutes, so there's one every 30 minutes essentially, or whatever that is, does like when the people are presenting, like are the employees like interacting in the chat, the people that are attending kind of commenting and interacting, like what kind of engagement do you see or facilitate around these presentations?
Yeah, that's a great question. Usually someone on my team, if not myself, my other teammate, we kick them off. So, we try to play music, we get people in a good mood to get started. It's Friday. We may like chat about something unrelated. And then we'll say, all right, it looks like we've got enough people logged in. So it's a show. It's like my TV background, right? And then like, all right, now we've got Jason here who is going to talk about innovation. So Jason, take it away, and then we just hide our screen. And then we just monitor the chat, we monitor the Q&A. And usually the chat, I think folks kind of know how it works. They're like asking questions. They're putting in their responses. They're using the Q&A if they have questions. Like they kind of know the gist of like how it works. And it's it's nice because it runs itself. And then if you're a new employee joining in and just kind of seeing it for the first time, you're seeing the behaviors. You're like, oh, I think it's okay if I go off mute and I don't have to use the chat. We give you multiple avenues to interact because we know we have a lot of introverts. Through our insight discovery data, we mostly introverted at Arity. And so we don't want you to have to like unmute or share your screen. If you have a question, you can use the chat. But if you're extroverted, like me, and like, hey, I want you to see my face, sure, we have that avenue for you there as well. And then we just kind of like, run those meetings in a way that is a little bit more exciting, I would say, versus just like, okay, here's Learn Day, here's this presentation. Like, that's not what we want to do. We want to also like make it entertaining.
Well, and I guess that resonates with something you described. I think you said, when I've talked to you in the past about this, you said something along the lines of, and I wrote this down because I thought it was so interesting and profound in terms of the way you think about this, is that your job is to curate an experience and an opportunity to connect. And it sounds like that's what, this is a good example of that. And so I would be curious to hear your advice to someone who is maybe hearing this and thinking, wow, this is really interesting, because I think my sense in talking to people, I think, is that there's a lot of folks who are wrestling with, especially in a distributed workplace, wrestling with how do I get people connected, right? How do we create opportunities to connect? But then they try to create opportunities that maybe lack, to your point, lack purpose or lack a specific outcome. It's just this, hey, we're doing this thing, everybody show up. And then it feels kind of hollow, or it doesn't ring the way they want it to. So if this is a great way to bring the two together, use learning as a way to create an opportunity for connection. So if someone was thinking about kicking this off, I guess two questions for you relative to this. One is, how would you suggest that they pitch this or propose this idea to get some support or to garner some support to try it? And what would an experiment or a pilot look like, do you think? Maybe where would they start? And then the second question is, I'll let you tackle the first one first, but then the second question is going to be like, what advice do you have, or what have you learned about sort of how to make it work? Like what the actual execution of that is. So let's start with pitching it. How do you sell this idea? If they want to take back and convince leaders they should invest in this, what would you say, based on your experience, is the best way to do that?
I think a lot of organizations say that they're focused on employees' career development, but they don't give them time to develop themselves. I know this from being in the learning development side of the house, right? You put out all these trainings and you do all this work and you don't have time to go because you have a meeting and there's no dedicated time for learning. So that's why, when you create like it is this day, everybody has it on your calendar. Everybody knows. And again, it's your choice if you decide. I can't make you do anything, but we can try to create the opportunity for you to come. And like I said, if you build it, they will come, but you have to curate that. And so that curating piece is when I first started this. And I remember I pitched it to our president, Gary Halgren. He was like, okay, you're going to try this? And I'm like, yeah. And basically I needed like 5 friends. That was like, who can I ask to help me make this happen as the presenters? And I said, here are my presenters. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run it all. Like, I will figure it out. And then if it goes well, we'll do it next month. If it goes well, like, we'll continue to get feedback from our employees. We'll continue to do it. But let me just do the first one. That's kind of how it started. So think of it as like your MVP, just like you're, building a product, your minimum viable product. You don't need all the banners and the colors and like the speed. Like, you don't need all that. But just figure out like, okay, why do I want to do this? Right? How does this fit into your organization? And what do you want to achieve out of it? So when people attend a Learn Day, they walk away with what? Right? A sense of community, a sense of pride that they got a chance to teach something, a sense of accomplishment that maybe they learned something from somewhere else. And, I think of like our water cooler, sense of pride to share who they are as an individual. So as you think about like, what is it that you want them to talk about? I feel like those buckets kind of resonate with Arity. And then, find those friends. And it really started off that way where it was like, okay, what can you present? I'm giving you like open avenue to present whatever you want. And I found something about the business. And I remember, someone did a pasta making. Like they just got back from Italy and they wanted to, my grandmother taught me, can I do that? I'm like, yes, let's do it. You've got supplies, I'll expense them. I'll take care of it. Like, just let's do it. And people can't, and they were like, what? Like, you have to have a couple things that are really cool so that they say that was interesting. That stuck with me. And, I think flash demos was one of, these are like 2 things like that kind of still happen today, like a flash demo, like the engineers could talk about what they're learning and the platform is for them to like showcase their knowledge. Why not? And so like, think about like your audience, like what are the things that maybe that they don't necessarily have this avenue for, and that can you make this Learn Day, whatever you want to call it, your avenue for them to then do what they want to do, to teach, to develop.
When as you're talking, I'm thinking like this, the pitch of it is so interesting because it's like, let's do it. It could even be, like you said, if you find 4 or 5 people, you're talking about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, right? Total. And so, the overhead for it is incredibly low. You already probably have the tech in place. You have to sort of do the legwork to do it and promote it. But if you do that right, to your point, you're hitting connection, you're hitting inclusion, you're hitting career development, you're hitting learning, it's so genius in that regard, and that it hits all these different things. So what's the hot button in the organization, right? What is the thing? It's probably connected to that. And so you should be able to use that. So any quick, just as last tips before we transition, I want to tap into your kind of TV background here. So as you are prepping people, because I'm assuming that's probably the hardest part at first, especially that first group, to get them to agree to do this in front of their peers. It's a brand new thing. What have you found, or what tips could you offer on how to really coach them, support them, encourage them, set them up for success in the best possible way? Any pro tips there?
Sure. We do have a pre-meeting that I'll check in with folks and say like, hey, what's your presentation? Do you want to practice? Let me look at what you've got. And so some people, they want to meet 3 times. Some people, they're like, let's meet 1. Some people are like, I'm good, Steph. whatever you need, like just make sure that you're there. Then before each session, there is a backstage pass. The backstage pass is the pre-meeting that no one else is invited to but the presenters, so that gives them a chance to calm down. They may be nervous. They get to practice sharing their screen, like the logistics of things. Sometimes, like I want you to be able to feel comfortable. You could focus on the content. So you create this buffer space for them. And what's interesting is we use the backstage pass, not just for Learn Day, but every major all company meeting that we run. So whether it's our big all company global recognition meeting, there's a backstage pass with all the presenters. And that is like the biggest meeting with multiple presenters. So everybody knows here's the flow, here's what to expect, here's what to do. Even our senior leaders, they know what I didn't get the backstage pass link. I'm like, here you go. Like, let's, everybody does. It doesn't matter what level you are. We all want people to feel safe and comfortable to do their best. And for some, like presenting like this isn't their first, like especially our engineers, like it's not their favorite thing, but they are happy to do it because they want to talk about the content. So it's also development of presentation planning for them, which I think is really cool. It's a lot of that behind the scenes stuff. And I think people just assume like, oh, let's just set up the meeting and then we'll show up. And then you're like focused on, oh, the tech isn't working. Like that's such a waste of company time. And I've always thought that, we used to do this like I had a TV rundown for when we were in person. And when we went remote, I'm like, oh, the TV rundown still works. Like, here's the backstage pass. Here's when you're getting mic. Now it's like, here's the backstage pass. Let's check your audio. It just correlated nicely. But I think, that's just that unique perspective I bring coming from 6 years of television news. But it makes a difference that it's almost like when it isn't there, people are like, how come we didn't prepare and plan? And then, people, the feedback we get is, wow, the culture team really runs good meetings. Like, that's great to hear.
It is. And I think I would say you don't necessarily have to have, well, not necessarily. You don't have to have worked in TV to pull that off. I think what I'm hearing from you is it's all about preparation, and it's all about allowing people an opportunity to work out the kinks in advance. Right. That's why, I have a pre-conversation prior to doing a podcast interview so that we can chat and talk through the things that would otherwise potentially get in the way to make this conversation go smoothly. It's just a little bit extra investment of time to make sure that when you do it, you nail it. And so thank you for sharing all of that. It's awesome. It's such an awesome practice and program. And I really appreciate you being willing to kind of let us get behind the curtain a little bit on that. So a couple more questions for you before I let you go. One is, I'm curious, what is a challenge or obstacle that you're wrestling with right now in your work?
I think, the fact that we are 100% remote, we are intentional about creating products to connect folks. There's still that need of human connection. And, this year, all the departments got a chance to come in person. Some never met in the 4 years since they'd never met. So, I got to be part of some of those on-site, which I think is still important. And in the research that I've seen in just the last couple of years, there have been other companies that create dedicated people to just focus on that in-person connection. So it's not like if we were going to come in person, I'm not going to sit here next to you on a desk and be on another like Teams or Zoom call. That's a waste of time and commuting. I would rather, be there and not have those meetings. And the meetings are about face-to-face. Like, what could we solve together? What could we experience together? And then, maybe have a little fun like we used to, like, let's go grab dinner after, or like just the basic human need. I think sometimes people forget. So we have to kind of figure out what does that look like on a bigger scale. And again, this year we're just kind of figuring it out. So it's something I want to try to tackle more next year. How do we, like if teams are there together, different departments, but they didn't know that each other was there. Like, how do we make that magic happen? Like maybe it's just some coordination. And I don't think it's hard. I think it's just like we're still trying to learn like what's the best way to do it. And the people live all over. So that's the other thing, how do we fly in folks? And, but I still believe that being 100% remote is the right thing for our company. And for our people and our work-life balance. But that piece of connection, if I just met you once in person, that could go so long for me until the end of the year, just because we were able to build that connection. And I truly believe and if you do come together, you have to create wow moments, like these moments where people will remember, and a shared responsibility of that memory. So, whether it's you went to a basketball game and this is a true example, and you got to be on the floor and the players got to come out and high five, you were high five. I was literally thinking Arity was coming out of the tunnel and like, wait, why would we come out of the tunnel? And they're like, no, the players. And it just was really funny. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, the players would come out of the tunnel, not Arity employees. But like the people that were there, you kind of remember those funny anecdotal moments. So then when you see each other, like, hey, remember when you thought about that when we were in, like, those things. And then it's like, okay, what work do you need? How can I help you? Right? Because you have that fun experience together. So how do you create wow moments when you do get together in person?
I love that you just planted the idea, at least the way that I heard this, and maybe this isn't what you intended, but what I heard is that organizations need to be very seriously considering adding a role or maybe a team whose explicit job is designing in-person experience, right? Designing for connection together, because it is something that needs to be done with great intention. And what you just described, as this is near and dear to my heart. Like people there's research and there is evidence that says when you come together in person, face to face with people and have shared experience, right? Participate in shared activity. That is glue that glues you together, and it creates trust and it fosters all kinds of positive impacts. And so that is really powerful. And I love that suggestion. I hope maybe we can make that happen, manifest that. So yes, I love that. Thank you for that. So one more big question for you, which is about the future. So as you think about work, the evolution of work broadly over the next 5 years, what do you hope will be different about work 5 years from now, from today?
I think in 5 years, I hope that AI is a little bit user-friendly to like the roles that we're doing. When I think about like we collect data, for example, like, there's a lot of administrative pieces to our role. Where we're like, all right, participation data, survey data, and then put it into a spreadsheet, and then like somebody does something else with it, and then then I can analyze it and I can look at it and like what are those insights? And I wish that there was like a way that, which I hope in AI, like it could just do that for me instead of me downloading to participant. Like that is so administrative that I'd rather focus on like the human piece. Like how do we solve, like, look at the insights and like how do we solve for that versus like all that administrative stuff. Now, is it part of the job? Yeah. But could AI make it better? I hope so. Because it's what would I say? It's not my favorite thing to do in my job, but it is such an important piece to do in the job. And I know for some folks, like they love all the data and they love pulling it. But it's like, well, now you also have to present it, and now you have to synthesize it. And I think, everybody has different strengths, but like, how could AI help us in all those aspects? Maybe it's even coming up with like, here's what we noticed with employees in the meeting. We noticed that the engagement level went down. Like, how cool would it be if then AI could then prompt us as the facilitator to notice, hopefully no one's sleeping, but like, there's engagement, no one's participating, like, wouldn't that be so cool? Like if it could do something like that, and maybe it's going to happen.
Maybe. I like the aspiration though to think about how it can how this new technology can supplement or sort of amplify our ability to do our work, especially around like one of the things that I have had bubble up in some conversations talking about AI is that like one of the potential possibilities of AI is to help us human better. because of it's, it's not going to forget. We forget stuff all the time, but it can be a reminder. It can see things or notice or sense, just like what you suggested, and then say, hey, you might want to check in on this person because this is what we're seeing or observing. And so, I think there's a ton of really great opportunity or potential there. So thank you for that. Thank you for that hopeful vision that hopefully is headed our way.
It's a great thought partner, if anything.
Yes. No. Well, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up, as we tie up our time together, I want to check out with you now quickly. So, in one word, how are you feeling right now as we wrap up our conversation?
I'm excited. I don't know if that's a lame word, but I am excited. When I get to talk about this stuff, this work, it's something I'm passionate about. And when you do your passion as your job, it's not a job. Like, I'm very lucky, and I know that. I'm so grateful for the opportunity at Arity, that all the different leaders have given me in my career, because this job didn't exist, when I graduated college. Like, I wrote the job, but it literally did not exist. Nobody was thinking about employee engagement. But the fact, we're not HR. Our job, we have the support of our leadership to do the right thing, and that freedom and that autonomy. Like, I couldn't ask for anything else. And that we get to try to test things out. And if it doesn't work, then we just kill it and iterate on, try to find something else. Like, there's organizations that say you should do that, but then they don't really let you. Our organization lets us try new things all the time. And I think, kudos to Arity and the leaders that we have that created this environment. But I want that for everybody, not just, not for me. I want everyone to feel that way.
Indeed. And my one word is inspired. For me personally, it's really energizing and inspiring to know that there are organizations out there like Arity and people like you that are blazing a path and creating new, making it possible for others to follow sort of what you are doing. And so no surprise that Arity has literally a page worth of workplace awards for engagement and inspiring workplaces and diversity and inclusion and all the other things. So no surprise there. So thank you for your work, Steph. And if someone wants to connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn. If you look, it'll be Stephanie Garcia Ryter. Got a little bit of my maiden name in there.
It's all right. Well, and I'll include the link in the show notes so to make it easy for people if they want to connect. Steph, thank you so much. I'm really honored that you joined me, and I appreciate you being here and sharing some of your great work. It's just scratching the surface of all that you do, but I really appreciate it. Super helpful.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. I hope you can take some insights from this conversation. Maybe you can take back and initiate a Learn Day or something like that in your workplace to make a real impact on your employees. And please remember to check in with those who matter most to you. Might be the most important thing that you can do today. Till next time.